In today's video, we're going to continue our Olympic hockey team prediction series. Today, we're taking a look at the roster prediction for Team USA, and that's coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. Now, as I mentioned today, we're going to be continuing on with our 2022 Olympic hockey roster predictions. Now, of course, in case you missed it, we started with Team Canada, which I'll link up here in the YouTube cards. That roster's already been predicted, and today we're taking a look at Team USA. Now, like Team Canada, I think Team USA is going to have an excellent hockey team. They really have a lot of top young superstars around the league and a lot of many more up-and-coming superstars who very well could be even stronger hockey players by the time the 2022 Olympics get underway. So let's start off here, first off, by taking a look at who I feel is going to be their three goaltender selections. Now, they have a lot of great goalies to pick from, but here is the three that I've selected. We've got Winnipeg Jets goaltender Connor Hellebuyck, who I think is the odds-on favorite, at least at this point, to likely be the main starting goaltender. Hellebuyck is going to have a couple of really solid years under his belt. This year, for example, was Winnipeg's top player, in my opinion, likely wins the Vezina Trophy, has really had a couple of solid years now, and he'll have that much more experience by the time we get to the Olympic Games. So Hellebuyck, to me, likely is the starting goaltender, but I do think Ducks goalie John Gibson is going to give him a good run for his money and will definitely be on his team as well. Gibson is a really solid goaltender. Oftentimes doesn't get the stats that some of the other goalies do because he's playing on a weaker team in Anaheim right now, but John Gibson definitely makes his team. He's an excellent goaltender. And personally, I see Ben Bishop being the third goaltender on this team. Now, of course, Bishop's going to be a little bit older by the time we reach the Olympics, but he's still a really solid goalie, putting up some really solid stats. And of course, by this point, will be the senior guy when it comes to age and experience. But clearly, I think by this point, he'll be the third string goaltender. Probably won't see a lot of playing time, but certainly will be there as an insurance policy and able to step in if one of the younger Gibson or Hellebuyck were to be injured. But those are my three goaltending predictions for Team USA. Now, let's next take a look at who I feel is going to be on their blue line and on defense here. So let's take a look at the first top defense pair, which I feel is going to be Boston Bruins defenseman Torrey Krug and Washington Capitals defenseman John Carlson. Now, it's quite possible by the time we get to 2022 that Torrey Krug may or may not be a member of the Boston Bruins. He's a pending unrestricted free agent. There's a lot of speculation on his future, but either way, he is a top offensive driving producer on the left side, where John Carlson can be that top right-handed defenseman for Team USA. Both can provide a lot of offense, run the power play. Team USA's blue line will have no shortage of firepower here for sure, but I see these two guys as having a lot of experience, are really capable leaders on this back end. Your second defense pair for Team USA I have as being the dynamic duo from the Columbus Blue Jackets of Seth Jones and Zach Werenski. Of course, they play together as one of the top defense pairs in the NHL. Only makes sense to keep them together here on Team USA. They're both tremendous defensemen. They play a little bit of a different style, but complement each other extremely well. Of course, Seth Jones is one of the top, probably 4 or 5 defensemen in the NHL, in my opinion. Of course, had a serious injury this year, missed some time, but many years has been, in and around the Norris conversation. I do see him getting a Norris Trophy at some point in his career here before too long. He's just that good and will be recognized at some point when he can put together a really solid year, but he really does stick out a lot in Columbus with Werenski as being really the core of that team. Without those two, they would have some major setbacks for sure. Zach Werenski, of course, scores a lot of goals, does a lot of other things well, and these two guys would make an excellent second pair for Team USA. Now, if you take a look at the third pair, of course, it's going to be difficult to nail down, but I have it right now as being Quinn Hughes and Jacob Slavin. Now, Slavin could very well slot on the first or second pair as well, depending on how the coaching staff wants to put this together. I think Jacob Slavin's one of the most underrated defensemen in the NHL. He can play a lot of minutes, 23, 24, 25 minutes a night, can play in pretty much almost any situation. Of course, in this kind of team, they're not going to really need him for power play, but he could certainly play more of a shutdown role, could play in the PK, play a lot of the defensive zone starts, that kind of stuff, and really be solid. And Quinn Hughes obviously has proven to be one of the top young defensemen in the game. Of course, he is on pace to be one of the top rookies this year, nominated for the Calder Trophy, a big part of Vancouver's future. And obviously, Hughes to me will make this team. I mean, it's hard to say for sure how big of a role he's going to have because a lot of that's going to depend on the other guys he's competing with here. But as far as some other defensemen that I feel will be on this team but might be fighting for ice time, it might be considered extras. The next two that I haven't narrowed down to would be Bruins defenseman Charlie McAvoy and New York Rangers defenseman Jacob Trouba. Now, both of these guys very easily could be on this team. Of course, it's going to be a tough choice for the coaching staff and management team to decide who stays and who ends up being the extra or who doesn't make the team at all and who gets cut. The Team USA's got a lot of great players. Not going to be an easy task, and it's really going to boil down to how they feel the best dynamic here for the team. But obviously another young player would be Rangers defenseman Adam Fox as well, as not that far off from a season of Quinn Hughes. This year is the top rookie defenseman in the NHL. Fox, along with Hughes and McCarr, some major bright spots for young D in the NHL, putting up an excellent race for the Calder Trophy this season. Fox very well could continue to improve and be in the running to be on this team too, depending on how young Team USA wants to go. They really have a lot of bright young hockey players. Many of them are already considered superstars at the NHL level, and obviously they're going to have a lot of guys to compete with here for these spots. So certainly some tough choices to make, but obviously that's who I went with for the blue line for this American squad. Now let's take a look at the four forward lines. On the top line, no big surprise here, centered by Maple Leaf star Auston Matthews. Of course, Matthews will be pretty much the face of this franchise. Certainly going to be a top scoring center iceman. Is going to play in all situations. Slowly becoming one of the top two-way centers in the NHL. But Auston Matthews is certainly going to be getting tons of attention when it comes to the Olympics. The Maple Leaf star will be the top line center, no doubt. And I have him being flanked on the wings here by Blackhawks winger Patrick Kane and Calgary Flames winger Matthew Tkachuk. This line gives you a little bit of everything. You got Matthews, who can be the sniper. You got Patrick Kane, who can be a terrific playmaker and put the puck on the net as well. Then you got Matthew Tkachuk, who can certainly pitch in on the offense while playing a really gritty, kind of solid game as well, helping create space for Kane and Matthews on this line. I think teams would have their hands full with this top American line, and they would have no problem putting up a lot of offensive numbers. Now let's take a look at your next forward line for Team USA. We have centered by Buffalo Sabres star Jack Eichel. On the wings, we have Calgary Flames forward Johnny Gaudreau and Ottawa Senators winger Brady Tkachuk. So I have both Tkachuk boys on this team. I think both are going to be well positioned to make an impact on Team USA. Of course, Matthew Tkachuk slightly older than Brady, a little bit more established, but Brady Tkachuk in his 2 years already proven to be a really effective top six winger. Has a 20-goal season now under his belt. By the time we reach 2022, I fully suspect he'll be an established 30-plus goal guy. Obviously playing a really gritty style of game similar to his brother. He's even a little bit bigger than his brother. And I think longer term, Brady could end up being a little bit better than Matthew, in my all honest opinion here. But obviously I see Brady Tkachuk playing with Eichel and Gaudreau on this American line and being extremely effective. I think like the Matthews line, Brady Tkachuk is going to help Eichel get some more time and space up there. You get Johnny Gaudreau, who's a good playmaker, and when you put the three together, they've all got the capability of putting the puck in the net as well. Now for line three, we've got it centered by Red Wings forward and likely captain by this point, Dylan Larkin. Larkin's got tremendous speed, one of the top bright young skaters in the NHL. Larkins plays a huge role for the Red Wings, and he'll play a little bit of a different role here on Team USA, play a little bit more of a defensive-minded side of the game, but still able to contribute offensively. And I've got him flanked by a couple of Winnipeg Jet wingers, Kyle Connor and Blake Wheeler. Now, this line obviously would have a connection here with the two Winnipeg Jet forwards being very familiar with each other, often playing on the same line. Of course, Blake Wheeler's a tremendous playmaking winger for sure. I mean, he's used to playing with Mark Scheifele as a center iceman, and he sets up Scheifele for a lot of goals, so he could do the same here with Connor and Dylan Larkin. I think this line could also be very responsible on the PK. It could be a really solid two-way line and play against some of the other team's top lines. I think this third line for Team USA could be very effective at both ends of the ice. Now, on your fourth line, I have it centered by Vancouver Canucks center JT Miller. Now, I know Miller's a versatile forward, can play a variety of positions, but lately I've seen him play a lot of center with the Canucks, and I think he's been very effective there, and I can see him continuing that and playing with his Canuck teammate Brock Besser on this fourth line joined by Penguins winger Jake Guentzel. And of course, Guentzel is a former 40-goal scorer. To have a 40-goal scorer on your fourth line just goes to show how deep this team is. I think this team could, again, play in a lot of different roles for Team USA. Of course, JT Miller's really proven to take his game up a notch here since going to Vancouver, showing a lot of leadership qualities with Vancouver. Pretty good goal scorer, pretty good playmaker, pretty good at both ends of the ice overall. You got Besser, who can shoot and score quite a bit, and you got Jake Guentzel, who's certainly somewhat of a sniper in his own right. Of course, he's used to playing with Crosby, which does make his job a little bit easier. But Guentzel, I think, would fit well with these two Canuck players, and this line could be extremely effective, even though in a little bit more limited role than the other three lines. Now, of course, as your extra forwards, here's who I've selected, kind of close to making the team. Likely would be, the last cuts in camp or end up being the extra guys. And I had that being Alex DeBrincat of the Chicago Blackhawks and Clayton Keller of the Arizona Coyotes. Now, both these guys are still relatively young. Keller, I expect to take some big progress here over the next couple of years leading into these Olympics. Of course, DeBrincat, a couple of years ago, was a former 40-goal man, but certainly dropped off a lot this past year. We'll see if he can gain back that scoring touch that he had before. Of course, it's debatable to see what his teammate Dylan Strome, what his future holds in Chicago. Of course, those two guys played together in junior and certainly had a nice resurrection and certainly resurrected their old relationship in Chicago. Got off to a really tearing start, but then really cooled off in this past year. Just didn't quite have that magic that they did before. Hard to say exactly where DeBrincat will be playing in that lineup before the Olympics come around, but if he can regain that scoring touch, I have no doubt him being a part of this roster in some capacity. Of course, that does leave off some pretty good, solid veteran players. I mean, you got guys like Chris Kreider, you got Anders Lee, you got Kevin Hayes, you got Oshie, Max Pacioretty. Obviously, some really solid veteran guys who have had great careers. I just see a lot of these younger players being a little bit more versatile, a little bit more dynamic, and I think personally that Team USA will go with a little bit more of a younger lineup. Now, of course, like I said before in the Team Canada video, there's a lot of other things that play here that you can't predict this far out. Obviously, this is just for fun anyway, but obviously, you don't know where players' health is going to be. They could end up with injuries and not be able to participate. Obviously, they could end up being traded between now and then. Maybe their stats really rise during their trade and things take off, or maybe they fall back. Like, there's a lot that can happen with some of these players. Even a young guy like Jack Hughes, for example, the first overall pick last year's draft, didn't really have a great rookie season, but, over another couple of years, maybe he'll prove that he is that player that everybody thought he was going to be and earn himself a spot. There's a lot of great young hockey players from Team USA who can represent their country once we reach the 2022 Olympics. So that is my prediction for the Team USA roster. As I mentioned before, Team Canada has been completed. Next time we touch on this series, we'll start looking at some of the other European teams and start predicting their rosters as well. So let me know what your thoughts are on the Team USA roster. Give me your predictions down in the comments and we can discuss further. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing, turning on your notifications so you don't miss any future content, and give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.